So The Boys Season 3 has wrapped up, and I initially wanted to make a review, but when I thought about it, all my thoughts were basically the same as they had been for the previous seasons. It's an excellent show with amazing performances and fun action and crazy brutal moments and really well thought out storylines that weave together in an interesting way. However, there was one aspect of this season in particular that stood out to me, that was also present in previous seasons, but was the most interesting here. And today I wanted to talk about why The Boys' political satire is so successful. I find it fascinating, because the social and political parallels the show draws to real life are such a massive part of the show, and are not remotely subtle, and yet for some reason it all works really well. I think the reason that surprises me is that since around 2015-2016, when politics started to get, let's say, even more divisive than they were before, and politics also became much more prevalent in mainstream content, a lot of stuff that's trying to have a message relating to politics has started to inherently feel cringy and overdone, regardless of what side it's on. And sometimes it is poorly done, sometimes it isn't, but in general, whenever a show or piece of media is trying to address a political issue, on the right or the left, a lot of people now just kind of tune it out and go, I don't even want to deal with this anymore. Which honestly might apply to some people with this very video. They might see the title and the thumbnail and be like, I don't even want to watch that. And yes, there are also people who call stuff political when really it isn't, and that's a whole other discussion, but I just found it very interesting that The Boys hasn't suffered from that. I haven't seen any takes really that are like, The Boys sucks because it's trying too hard to push its agenda and its message. And I think in the current climate, that's pretty impressive. So, how does it do that? One reason I'd say is the way it mixes its political satire with the superhero genre. The Boys has a lot of not at all subtle parody in it already, obviously parodying superhero tropes, superhero media, movie studios, and whatnot, and that works as well because the show isn't trying to be subtle about it. It goes quite obvious with its parody so it can add more of its own world's flavor. It isn't just like a scary movie situation where it's like, look, here's a superhero thing, but a little different and naughtier, so it's funny. It does that up front and very obviously, and that's part of the fun, but then that's just one layer of the show's interesting aspects. Then add on top of that unique storylines for characters, unique takes on tropes that are being parodied, and then political satire on top of that. That is also just one aspect of the show, just like the superhero movie parody stuff is only one aspect of the show. And the political satire isn't just thrown in there for no reason. It's worked organically in from the characters. The comparisons to real life, especially with Homelander and his supporters being compared to, a general idea in politics that may or may not be linked to one specific politician, is also just a really clever riff to put on this character. It doesn't feel like they just forced this type of storyline on a character that it didn't work for. We built up this character independently of that, and a story that has parallels to the real world fit perfectly for that character's progression. It's an added element to his character. The character wasn't pushed in that direction just to have that storyline, if you know what I mean. At least it doesn't feel that way. I mean, I am admittedly trying to avoid talking about the direct comparisons, because this is the internet, and I just don't want to get involved in the dumpster fire of internet political talk. But I mean, again, the show is not subtle. Look at the supporters and the way Homelander talks, and how some of the rhetoric is literally taken from real life. My point is, it's a clever way that real life comparisons can be drawn from the characters in the show, rather than characters being created just for real life comparisons to be drawn. And that's what makes it work. Quick reminder here that if you're enjoying this video, drop a like, subscribe, hit the bell button, and let me know your thoughts on all this down below. Also, after the video, check out my podcast, the Poorly Planned Podcast. Alright, back to the video. I also want to be clear here, I sort of referenced this earlier, but when I say political and talk about shows getting political, I know that term is thrown around way too much, and some dumb people, just apply it to when shows have, different cultures in them. I'd like to stress that that is not what I'm talking about when I say that, just so I don't get lumped into that camp. I'm talking about when shows actually try to parody and talk about real-life politics and social issues. Some do well, some don't. I also think another reason this aspect of the show works so well is that it draws really funny comparisons to the real world in making fun of some of this stuff and pointing out its ridiculousness by viewing it through this ridiculous superhero world lens. Of course, there are more serious allegories and parallels to real-world social issues, like the Blue Hawk storyline, but stuff like the ongoing news network that Homelander goes on, and the way Vought tries to manipulate the public and twist stories, can lead to some hilarious comparisons to the real world, just like the superhero movie parody stuff can be hilarious. Now, this might be some dicey territory here, because I try not to talk about my political views, just because, again, trying to stay away from the dumpster fire, and I know people don't care. I talk about movies and shows, who cares what my political views are. But simply for the sake of explaining how some political humor can be ineffective, I'd like to look at Stephen Colbert's Late Show real quick, which I used to be a pretty big fan of, and now don't really love. I'll watch occasionally, I'm not as much of a fan anymore. And the thing is, politically, I agree with pretty much everything that's said on that show. Like, the ideas and politics match up with my own personal ideas in a pretty spot-on way. However, I don't really enjoy those monologues anymore because it's not really that inventive and gets a bit tired. It's just the same very predictable jokes over and over again. That's actually a whole topic I've thought about making a video on, by the way. My point is, I'm not just saying I like The Boys' political satire because I agree with the message it's conveying, which I do, but I am trying to talk more about the content and the writing and how it's executed. And my point with all this is, you can agree with someone's political opinions and still think their jokes and satire relating to it aren't really that great. And I think The Boys' satire is great, not just because I agree with it, but also because it's just well done. The Boys makes jokes about the ridiculousness of some stuff in our real world that I agree should be made fun of, and when it's not making fun of them, but rather making a point about them in a more serious way, I agree that that should be addressed and talked about, but I don't think writing-wise, show-wise, content-wise, it's good just because I agree with it. It's actually handled in a creative and unique way, and that's why it's effective. I think part of that, again, comes from this grander superhero framework that the show is working in, which allows for more interesting ways of communicating a message and addressing this kind of stuff, rather than just pointing out something and being like, look, we did a thing that relates to the real world. Isn't that clever? I'd say another example would be the last season of Brooklyn Nine-Nine, where they introduced this new police chief character, or whatever. Again, a show where I agree with all the political and social messages in it. I just thought the way it was handled was kind of lazily written and predictable and not that funny, and sort of stuck out about the show. Same thing with Don't Look Up. Agree with the message, didn't think the satire was that creative or funny. I'm not saying The Boys always does it 100% perfectly. Sometimes it's so on the nose that it's a little much even for me, but generally speaking, doing funny and clever parody that fits with the show's style and comes organically from the world and characters the show has built up is why I think The Boys' political satire is so effective, and has been a big part of a very popular show without alienating audiences and drawing criticism that other shows and movies have for trying to do a similar thing in recent years. And I think that's pretty impressive. Again, not all of those things that have gotten criticism deserve the criticism. It's a whole thing. You know, we can talk about this all day long. I specifically wanted to talk about The Boys.
Wow.
Whew. Okay, so that felt like navigating a bit of a minefield. I've been thinking about making this video for a while, and I think it's a shame that the internet is in such a state that I don't want to make a video that is about a show, and a show's writing specifically, just because it involves politics. I'm not trying to dive into politics here. I honestly just thought the way the show handled this stuff is weirdly really well done. And by the way, there's way more to it than I even covered here, like with Stormfront supporters, and some stuff with Starlight, and a bunch of stuff with Soldier Boy, and how the season ends, MM's wife's new husband, and all that. There's also the reality TV parody part of it, that also leads a bit into the social political side of things. I mean, there's much more to dive into here specifically, like specific parts of the show. I just wanted to talk more overall why I think it worked. I just wanted to give my 2 cents and then step away from it, even though I know the comments are still probably going to be a bit more chaotic than usual. But hey, this is my channel and I talk about what I want to talk about. I might make a video on how I feel about late night shows, like I mentioned earlier, just because again, from the perspective of how those are written and presented, I find that interesting. But hey, we'll see. Anyway, The Boys Season 3 was awesome, by the way. If you want my review, that's it. It was great. Just as good as the other 2. If not better, maybe. The Boys is one of the best shows these days. Hands down. Could have done without that one scene in episode 1, though. You know the one. So, those were my thoughts on how The Boys handles its political satire. What did you think of the latest season, and everything I talked about here? Let me know all your thoughts down below in the comments. While you're at it, be sure to like this video, check out my Instagram and Twitter at BHL_Hudson, my TikTok at BHLHudson, my Letterboxd at RealBHLHudson, check out this podcast that I do with a friend of mine where we talk about movies, TV shows, a bunch of nonsense. It's called The Poorly Planned Podcast, and subscribe for more videos like the one you just watched. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.